Margaret, a 70-year-old widow, found a new chance at love when she met Jake, a 25-year-old young man. But what began as a sweet and unexpected romance turned into a devastating nightmare. Discover how a shocking betrayal involving her own daughter changed Margaret's life forever. Margaret lived a quiet and solitary routine in the small town of Fairview. Her house, filled with memories and silence, reflected a life marked by the longing for her deceased husband. One day, during her usual morning walk in the park, she met Jake. He was a charming and attentive 25-year-old who helped her when she stumbled over a rock. Jake's kind gesture, accompanied by a warm smile, brightened Margaret's day. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, holding her arm. "I am, thank you very much, young man," Margaret replied, feeling a bit embarrassed. "I'm Jake. I come here every day. Can I walk with you?" Margaret accepted the company, and so began their daily conversations. Jake seemed genuinely interested in her stories, and Margaret, feeling rejuvenated by the attention, began to look forward to these encounters eagerly. Over the weeks, their friendship blossomed into something deeper. Jake took her out to dinner. They watched movies together, and he made her laugh like no one had done in years. "Margaret, you're an amazing woman. I feel something special for you," Jake confessed one evening as they walked by the lake. With her heart racing, Margaret replied, "I feel it too, Jake. You've brought light into my life." Their relationship quickly evolved. Jake, always a gentleman, started spending more time at Margaret's house, helping her with chores and keeping her company on lonely nights. He seemed to be the answer to the loneliness she had felt since her husband's death. Margaret was dazzled by the attention and affection she received, believing she had found a second chance at love. Jake soon began showing an unusual interest in Margaret's finances, suggesting investments and asking for money for shady projects. Margaret, still caught up in the romance, didn't realize Jake's intentions until one day she discovered a significant amount missing from her bank account. Her precious collection of heirloom jewelry, passed down through generations, also mysteriously disappeared. The shock of betrayal was devastating. Determined to understand what was happening, Margaret decided to investigate on her own. She searched every corner of the house but found nothing. The feeling that something was wrong became undeniable. Restless and suspicious, she decided to hire a private investigator. A few days later, the investigator returned with devastating news. Jake was siphoning money from her account and selling her jewelry. The trust Margaret had placed in him was completely shattered. In the report, the investigator detailed the transactions and provided irrefutable evidence of the scam. Margaret could hardly believe what she saw. The man who had promised eternal love was only interested in her possessions. Margaret felt a deep pain realizing she had been deceived. She recalled every moment with Jake, trying to identify the signs she had ignored. The laughter, the dinners, the promises of a future together, everything now seemed like a cruel hoax. Amidst the pain, a fierce determination began to rise within her. She knew confronting Jake impulsively could worsen the situation. Margaret needed to protect what was left, and at the same time, carefully plan her next steps. She decided to stay calm and pretend she knew nothing. She continued to act normally while secretly working with the investigator to recover her money and jewelry. Every day alongside Jake was now a challenge, but Margaret stood firm. She watched his every move, mentally noting his actions and words. The knowledge of his betrayal filled her with sadness and anger, but she channeled these feelings to strengthen her resolve. She knew the time to confront Jake would come, but for now, she needed to maintain the facade of a woman still in love and confident. Margaret was determined to turn the tables and seek justice for the betrayal she had endured, without Jake suspecting a thing. The tension in her life increased with each passing day, but Margaret was ready for the challenge. She would not allow a con artist to destroy her life and steal her precious memories. Determined to uncover the whole truth, Margaret continued working with the private investigator. With each passing day, new revelations emerged, each one more devastating than the last. The investigator's final report brought the most painful discovery. Jake wasn't acting alone in the scam. He had an accomplice, someone Margaret would never have imagined. One afternoon, while reviewing the investigator's documents, Margaret stumbled upon a series of messages exchanged between Jake and her eldest daughter, Laura. The messages revealed that Laura was deeply involved in the plan to steal from her own mother. Margaret felt as though the ground had disappeared from beneath her feet. How could Laura do this? Desperate for answers, Margaret arranged a meeting with the investigator. "Are you sure these messages are real?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Unfortunately, yes, Mrs. Margaret. All evidence points to your daughter's involvement in the scheme," the investigator replied, with a sympathetic look. Margaret returned home with a heavy heart. Jake's betrayal was already painful, but knowing that Laura, her own daughter, was involved was unbearable. Determined to confront Laura, she invited her for tea the next afternoon. "Laura, we need to talk," Margaret said, trying to remain calm. "Of course, Mom. What's wrong?" Laura replied, seemingly unconcerned. "I found something disturbing. These messages between you and Jake. What does this mean?" Margaret placed the evidence on the table, staring at her daughter. Laura, visibly nervous, attempted to conceal the truth. "Mom, you're not understanding. Jake asked me to help him plan a surprise for you. It's not what you're thinking." "Don't lie to me, Laura. I know everything. I know you plan to steal my money and my jewelry," Margaret said, tears welling up in her eyes. Laura collapsed to her knees, crying. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was desperate. Jake promised me it would be temporary, that we would return everything." "Desperate? And you decided to betray your own mother? How could you do this?" Margaret could barely contain the pain and anger. Laura, realizing there was no more hiding the truth, broke down. "Mom, I'm pregnant. I didn't know what else to do. Jake said he would take care of everything, that it would be best for us." Margaret was stunned. Laura's revelation of her pregnancy added a new layer of complexity to the betrayal. Now, it wasn't just financial and emotional betrayal, but also the future of her grandchild at stake. "Get out of my house, Laura, and take Jake with you. We'll deal with this another way," Margaret said, her voice firm despite her shattered heart. Margaret knew she needed to act swiftly, but the confrontation with Laura and the discovery of her pregnancy only fueled her determination to seek justice and protect her family. After the confrontation with her mother, Laura was consumed by regret and fear. She told Jake about Margaret's discovery and her fear of being reported to the police. "Jake, my mom knows everything. I'm terrified. What if she reports us?" Laura said, trembling with nervousness. Jake, always calculating, decided he needed to act quickly. "Don't worry, Laura. I'll take care of it. Just do as I say." The next day, while Margaret was out of the house, Jake returned to the residence. His plan was simple and cruel: destroy all evidence and disappear, leaving Laura behind. With a can of gasoline, he began spreading the liquid on the floor. Margaret, upon returning home, saw Jake entering her residence from afar.